We are back again, streaming live here on Facebook and on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. I'm kind of doing this pop-up mesh up. I didn't announce this show. I know I mentioned last week that I was going to come back on to continue the conversation about what is a kingdomhood. So I decided to do a pop-up and just talk a little bit more about the third floor or third piece of what a kingdomhood is. But first, I want to give a shout out to just all the African American icons before us, before me or anybody else who has this type of thought process of building your own. But one that are most noticeable that I can think of off the top of my head is Dr. Claude Anderson. He wrote the book called Powernomics, and he talks about this. Dr. Boyce Watkins talks about building your own. You got Dr. Umar Johnson that also talks about, building their own city, school system, and things like that. So I always like to make clear that, I'm not the creator of this, but I am on this bandwagon. And the reason why I'm on this bandwagon of creating your own city, your own kingdomhood, your own town, is because it's really the only way that I see that we can have a place where we get fair treatment, fair opportunity, fair protections under the justice systems, politicians that are really, really involved in the city, churches as well, and also in interaction with the police. You don't have to worry about being, unarmed black men being shot or brutalized or things like that. Because the other approach that we've always been taking, we've been doing that for the last 40 years. I'm sorry, not 40 years, 400 years, asking for equal rights, asking for equal protection under the law, begging to be equal and all this stuff. And nothing seems to have changed to the point where we are 100% on an equal playing field with, under the current climate of an oppressive system. Now, I want to make clear, when we talk about a system or a race, it's not a person, it's a system. Okay, race is a contest between two people. That's what race is. Race is a contest. In fact, race itself is a social construct, and there's never anything equal. A race is never equal. Like I was watching the Olympics today. Nobody tied. People either first, second, third, or fourth. When you go watch an NBA championship or a Super Bowl, or you go to the horse races, you're not going there. You don't want the horse to tie. It's a race. Somebody has to win. Somebody has to lose. So when you're in a race-based society, things will never be equal. Because what you're essentially asking is for the people who control the particular system, which is pretty much the white power structure, because they control most of America's wealth, to give up power. And and up to this point, in the last 400 years, that has not happened. So the only way to really get back again, to have that secure of equal protection, equal rights, opportunities, is actually just to build your own, have your own city, like we had in Rosewood, like we had in Tulsa, like we had in Charleston, South Carolina. We had our own hotels and busing systems, cab cars, like they had in Sweet Albany in Georgia. We had a really, really prominent black city, like they had in Bronzeville, in Chicago, and all these other prominent black cities that were around throughout the United States. But because, of course, of the Black Removal Act, and they started the Highway Act of 1956, I believe it was, when they started moving, and just among, we know what happened in Tulsa and all, and some cities, they just flat out bombed them or set them fire. But the other ones, all these black prominent towns throughout the United States, they start the Highway Act, because in 1950s, that's when suburbia, so there were no suburbs prior to 1950. There were none. There were just areas, neighborhoods where white people live and black people live based on Jim Crow. Then after World War II, the GI Bill, America started to grow. You had people come back from the war and having babies, the baby boomer era, and there was a housing shortage. So what America did was got into the government supported giving loans to soldiers. They bought houses. Houses in high demand. They had to build more houses. At that time, that's when suburbia was created. Well, they needed a way for the white suburbians to get home from work. So they started the Highway Act. Now, funny enough, I guess it's not funny. I can say ironically enough, all these highways that they built throughout America went through black neighborhoods. I think I mentioned this before, that you cannot find a highway that was built in this country that went through a white suburban neighborhood. They put all the highways through the black neighborhoods. And it happened in my lifetime. I grew up in 119th and Crenshaw, and the 105 freeway. That came through pretty much a black neighborhood. That's pretty much went through all of Inglewood and all up along that corridor. You had blacks and you had Latinos that lived there too. The 10 freeway went through a town called Sugar Hill. The 10 West is where it actually is, somewhere around Bundy area in National. There was a black city called Sugar Hill, a prominent black city, that highway wiped out that entire city. Well, those are some examples that happened throughout Black America. So that's kind of what happened to a lot of the black towns. Now, there are black towns throughout America. I remember when I used to live in Orlando, Florida, they had Edenville. Edenville was, I believe it was the first black incorporated city, I believe. And when I lived in Orlando, I went by to visit. And the city would just have been just ripped of all its resources. It was just an absolute poor, rundown city. There was no jobs, no opportunity. The businesses were closed. This is back in 2010. Who knows? I haven't been there. That's 10 years ago. It may be gentrified by now, but I went there in 2010. It was just black, homeless black people, poor black people hanging out. But the funny thing is that went to the church. We saw the church there. That was a nice building, and the pastor had a brand new bench. Strange, but that's pretty much what happened. So that's what happened to a lot of the black cities. Now you cannot find a black town throughout the United States. I mean, there are areas where black people live throughout the country. Like I think parts of Atlanta, you can see some of that. But the city is not owned and controlled by black folks. I mean, from the police chief to the mayor, to the court system, all the businesses, the education system, the media and all that stuff is controlled by African Americans. You just won't find that throughout this country. And it's sad because the very people who built this nation are the ones that don't have a town to call their own within the United States, and every other race does. So I think, as I open with, that's why I really got on this thing about Kingdomhood. So the first floor of the Kingdomhood, Kingdomhood is just a safe neighborhood. That's all it is. You can call it whatever name you want. I just call it Kingdomhood, but you can call it Black Community. You can call it, whatever you want. Black Town, Black Metropolis, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. The point is where we have a city where we own and control that particular city. So the first floor of the Kingdomhood was economics. And I want to go back because I forgot to mention one important thing about economics. I talked about banks, okay? And I talk about all the businesses are owned and controlled by African Americans. And those banks loan money to those businesses. All the people in their community put money in that banks. If we have like a big Walmart or a Target or something that comes in our area, they need to put their money, I'm sure not for the whole entire company. It's a nationwide company, but they need to put a certain amount of their revenue that they make within that defined area of that black community into that black bank. And they also need to reinvest some of that profit that they have into, parks, school programs, feeding the home within that particular city. They have to reinvest their money in that particular city. So that way the black banks have the assets to loan and invest in that particular community. So what is the thing you need to have a city that I forgot to mention? I apologize for this. And that is land. Land is important. The first thing God gave Adam was land. That's the first thing he gave him. When he made man, he said, Adam, you have dominion over over everything. He gave him land. Okay. I think that was God's promise to Abraham as well. He gave him land. You got to have land. So the first thing we got to do is acquire the space to be able to build these cities. And that's not easy. It's a complex problem. But the thing is, you can't have a city if you don't have land. So we find a way to get to land. I think I read somewhere there's like 12 cities across this country that are for sale or that can be bought. So there's always a way to buy land. Now, where this particular black town would be within the United States, don't know that. I mean, it could be anywhere where there's an opportunity. It could be here in LA where I am. It could be in Texas. It could be in, Chicago, some area somewhere. It could be, I don't know, in North Carolina, but it just has to be somewhere where we have our own city. So the first one was economics. They talk about investing in business and acquiring the land that has, so you can build a black neighborhood. Or if there's already a black area, then we can expand that land if needed, or just really invest in that land and build it up. And then I talked about politicians, because you got to have politicians in your city. You got to have politicians. Now, I mean, the politicians that are really working in the community, and the tax revenues and all the revenues that the politicians use or have access to, that money is definitely reinvested. And the reason why they work for this community, because the major complaint about politicians, the complaint about Republicans is the Republicans don't even talk to the black community, which is completely true. They don't give a damn about black folks. I really agree with that. And the Democrats make a bunch of promises to black people to get our vote, and they don't keep them. And that is also true. So both parties are complicit in ignoring what black people need, and ignoring our vote, and ignoring what we go through on in the society, the challenges that we deal with that no other race has to deal with. The way we get around that is we finance the politicians. Black people don't finance politicians. We do vote. We do vote, yes, but we don't finance anybody. If the white power structure is financing your politician, who in the hell you think he's going to be committed to? It ain't going to be you, because you voted for him. It's going to be for the person who's financing his campaign. It's going to be the lobbyists that show up at his office on a daily basis and say, we'll put money in your campaign if you vote this in. We, as black folks, for the most part, are not involved in our politics enough. We don't show up on our politician's office. We're not calling him. We're not holding his feet to the fire to make sure he does everything that he says he's going to do. So they don't. You want to look at these inner cities with these black Democrat politicians that don't do a damn thing. This is what the reason is, because we vote and then sit back and think they're going to change the world for us. And that's not the way politics work. Okay. So that's one piece of it. But the other piece of it is, as I mentioned, we buy them. We're buying you. We're financing you campaign. We're placing you in this office, and this is what you're going to do. Now, when you finance the politician, oh, then you got it. Then they'll do whatever you want to do, because you're the one who's financing them, not white donors or these corporations or these billionaire white businessmen that are financing your community because they want to come and gentrify the place. Okay, so the next is court systems and police. When you own and control the city, then you own and control the business climate, you own and control the economics, you own and control the politicians. Now you own and control the police and the court system. We complain about how much time black folks are getting for the same crime that white people get. For the same crime committed by a white man and a black man, the black man always get more time than the white man got for the exact same crime. That's been a complaint throughout history. We know what they did with the crack era. We know that there are a lot of black men doing time for false DNA evidence. That's not happening to white men. There's white men who sold powder cocaine that got 6 months, but you got a black man with the crack that got 6 years and more. We know that the justice system targeted black folks through the crime bill of 1994. And why is that happening? It's because we don't own and control the court systems. If you have a white controlled court system, You really think they're going to have pity or going to have favor on you as a black man who they deem as a criminal, menace to society, especially a gang member, a known drug dealer? They're going to throw the book at you. And that's what's been done throughout history. Now, let me be clear. Just because there's a black judge or the court systems are owned and controlled by African Americans doesn't mean you can go break the law and you're not going to go to jail, because the primary responsibility supposed to be for a court system or for a justice system is to enact justice in a way that it keeps that society or that neighborhood or that city safe. Okay, so I'm all for, if you break the law, you should go to jail. The difference is the whole book's not thrown at you like it is in our current justice system, and they're not targeting black folks to give them longer sentences than white people are getting. There is, for somebody who is maybe a first-time offender, or somebody who is maybe the judge at his discretion seems that deserves a second chance, can put him on some type of work release program, or put him on some type of education or job training program to really try to help people change their life around. It's all a possibility if you're in control of the court systems, and you don't have to worry about you getting tons more time than somebody else would for the same crime. So if you own and control the court system, it kind of puts you in power to do that. When you own and control the court systems, you own and control the politicians, then you own and control the police station. Now, policing in the black community has been far more problematic than policing in any other neighborhood since the beginning of this country. Well, I can't say the beginning of this country, but since the beginning of police, which is around 1704. Police that pretty much were part of the KKK. They were part of the white power structure. They were part of the lynchings and beatings and out shootings. The police were complicit in white supremacy, and they still have that same mindset today. That's why we got the Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, that's the one where Amber Geiger walks into his house, the wrong house. She said it was her house. She thought it was her house. She walks in his house, kills a man in his underwear, eating. And because she's part of it's a white justice system down there in Texas, she got 10 years. Chauvin put his knee on a man's neck for 9 minutes and got 22.5 years. If the feds don't come in and give him more time, then what's going to happen? He'll probably do 15 years for a flat out murder. That's a torture before our eyes. I know black men that got 15 years for selling crack. I know a black man that got 15 years for selling weed. I know a black man that got 15 years for stealing cars in Torrance. He had priors, but he got 15 years. He had a bunch of other non-violent crimes, but he got 15 years. Oh, yeah. Because what the judge did is he gave him 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, and ran them all consecutively. Yeah, 15 years. But a white man can just put his knee on a black man's neck and only do 15 years. That's a white justice system. A black justice system is going to be fair. In a black justice system, Chauvin would have got life. Just like if a black man killed another black man in a gang shooting, or if a black man just killed somebody, period. It's just what I'm saying, what I'm trying to get to you is fair. The justice system is fair and impartial. It's not, we don't give white people a break, but give black people, put them under the jail. And this has been a problem. There's case after case after case after case when black people have been, just absolutely severely mistreated and been targeted with just absolute surgical precision by the justice system. And the white people have been given given an open door to get out or do less time than what they should. And I got that from personal experience. I was in jail back in the 90s for being a part of a legal chop shop. There was a white guy who was a child molester, and that white judge, that white system, Let him walk out the court. And the DA was saying, don't let this man out. Don't let this man out. This is a white DA saying, don't let this man out. He has a habit of messing around with little girls. Oh, that didn't stop anything. Judge let him, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Let him walk out. Me? Oh, they sent me up the river. That's the white justice system. That's the white justice. So we don't have a snowball chance in hell to survive if your court systems and your policing are controlled by people who don't look like you, who don't live near you, who look at you as like animals, who look at you as subhumans. You don't have a chance in hell of getting any type of fair treatment. Now, when you have a black city that has opportunity, that has black businesses, and black people are doing well, our children will see that, and less of them will be in the courtroom in the first place and making these bad decisions to get themselves in front of these judges. Now, I want to be clear. I always say this. It's 50% public policy, 50% personal responsibility. You know, if you sell drugs or steal cars or, you know, shoot somebody or get involved in gangs, that is a personal decision that you're making. And when you get caught by, you know, the law, and you have to go before that judge, whatever he gives you, fair or not fair, a lot of the fault is yours because, you know, these kids are making the decision. But why are they making these decisions? Because they're in a community that's run down. They don't see any opportunity. What they see about around them is gangs and drugs. And a lot of their mentors and father figures or big homies, whatever you want to call them, are using their life for crime, and they follow that way. It's much different than Kirky, who grows up in the suburbia, where it's a nice neighborhood, you know, two working home, two parents in the home, you know, working every day, and he sees, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Lucas and all these people. They own the businesses. When he goes to the grocery store, you know, he goes in and buys his food from a white man. This is what he sees: the grocery store, the auto parts store, the hardware store. These are all owned by white men. Okay, so this kid sees this. It's a normal neighborhood. There's not a lot of crime and drug in these neighborhoods. Now there is crimes and drugs in white neighborhoods too, but I'm saying it's not as rapid it is in these black neighborhoods who are underserved. But let me be clear. Any psychologist or sociologist will tell you that where there's no resources, whether it be white or black, the crime is virtually the same. So it's really come to resources, not about a race of people, it's resources. So that's why in a kingdomhood, you're going to have all these resources and these opportunities that are available for young black boys and girls, so they won't have to turn to a life of crime. Okay, so and we've had this before. I don't know about the court systems. That's probably something new, but I do understand the business climate and the politicians. But it was during a Jim Crow era when black people couldn't live in white neighborhoods, and that's all we had was us. And like I said, I think integration was the worst thing that ever happened to black folks. And I'm not saying that because we don't need to live and intermingle with white people. I'm saying it because we came less dependent on each other, and we came looking for white people's validation. And because of that, we stopped working together. We stopped depending on each other. In our neighborhoods, and you look at these neighborhoods that were throughout America, just like now what you see with these other races, their dollar stays in their neighborhood 9 days. Our dollar stays in our neighborhood maybe nine hours at the most, because they get their money and they go and they buy it from somebody who looks like them. When we get our money, we walk out our house and we buy a product for somebody who doesn't look like us. So our dollars don't recycle. They go out, they go right into our bank account or our pockets, and they go right out the neighborhood, right out of the black community, making other communities rich and making ours poor. That has got to change. That has got to change. And the only way it's going to change is that we have our own city where we can build and have black businesses like we used to have, and our dollars stay in our cities. But for that to happen, of course, we have to have a city that is owned and controlled by people who look like us. Okay, businesses are owned with people that look like us. We walk into a bank that's ran by people that look like us. Okay, if I need to get a loan, I can get it from somebody who looks like me. If I want to buy a car, there's local car dealerships with somebody who looks like me. What about when I want to go to a hotel, and high-rise businesses, and everybody in there and the ownership? I can get a job because I got somebody who looks like me. And when I go to college, kids go to college and they go home, they can come back to their neighborhoods because the neighborhood is already this business opportunity. The kids can start new businesses or their parents own businesses, and they can come in and reinvest just like the Asians do, just like the white people do, just like every other race does. When a white guy, say example, you have an example of a poor white guy, and he, let's say he just goes to the NBA and makes a lot of money, for example. He doesn't move to a black neighborhood. He stays right in his own neighborhood, or he moves to a white neighborhood. But when a black kid gets an NBA contract or NFL contract or a Major League Baseball contract, or just gets a job in corporate America, what do? They move to the white neighborhood. And I understand that because a lot of times, if you're living in parts of Baltimore, if you're living in the rough parts of Queens, New York, or South Central, I get it why you don't want to live there. I mean, it's, some areas are not safe. So I understand that. But what if we had it where we had a black city that was safe? That was a community. That was where the police looked at you with respect. I mean, if you were breaking the law, getting into trouble, they did. But imagine this, like when in white neighborhoods, a black kid is getting in trouble and he'll say, "Hey, you're Mr. Harrison's son, huh?" And, my son would say, "Yeah, okay, cool. I'm taking you home. I'm gonna drop you off at your dad. I'm gonna drop you off at home." And I knew, and the police walked up to the door and said, "Hey, your son was out here causing trouble. And, I just want to let you know, Mr. Harrison, your son's out here, cutting up." And then I take my son in the back room and give him some act right. Instead of the cops seeing my son, automatically assuming he's in a gang because he's a black man, and putting up, throwing him up against the car, roughing him up, pulling his gun out on him, beating him up, or worse, shooting him. Okay, so if a black child happens to be breaking the law, they are arrested like they should be. If you're breaking the law, you need to go to jail. They are arrested. Okay, and the police says, the police say, "Okay, you're under arrest for this, and we're gonna call your parents, and let them know what's going on. See if they want to come, and then we're gonna turn you, because if he's a minor, then we're gonna turn you back over to your parents. But this is what you have to deal with." You see that? The kid's arrested, and he's given his day in court because the police are of that community. Okay, we don't need white people policing black folks unless the situation where they live in that community, they understand the culture, the climate, the people. They don't need to be policing. You don't need a white guy who's a police officer in Simi in Compton, but he lives in Simi Valley with all white people. He lives with all white people, but he comes to police a city where it's predominantly black people. Well, Compton, now heavy Latino too. That doesn't work, and it'll never work because they look at you like you're less than human. That's why a lot of them get shot, pulled over, roughed up. Now it's the sheriffs that are really bad. LA sheriffs are really bad because it's the leadership. They got this little short, little Latino dude, little short, sawed off, big mouth dude that's got a little man's complex that is allowing these LA sheriffs just to pretty much run roughshod over the black community. I mean, there's all kind of deals out there where these sheriffs are just acting a damn fool because this little midget, is allowing them to act like that. You see that type of stuff. Now, a lot of times the sheriffs are contracted, like for Lawndale and like in Compton, because they're county. So with some of these unincorporated cities and some corporated cities, like Lawndale's an unincorporated city, Compton, of course, is a corporate city because it has its own mayor and, city councilman and all that stuff. So they pretty much got rid of, years ago, they got rid of Compton police and hired the sheriff. That's fine. But if you're paying for that, then they're not going to come. Sheriff's not going to come in there and just be brutalizing and terrorizing and harassing black folks if they were contracted by a city that was owned and controlled by black folks. Oh no, that's not what they'd be doing, because they would have they would be under rules of engagement. They would absolutely be under rules of engagement. And if they didn't want to do that, then they wouldn't be able to be hired by this particular city. That's kind of another situation. But I just want to kind of give you something to think about. And this is what a kingdomhood is. It's about building a neighborhood where we can feel like kings and queens and feel protected. I should be able to walk with my head held high and be proud of where I am. And this is not so much all of a government's fault or a policy. It's a personal responsibility things too. We have to invest in our neighborhoods. We have to, start businesses. We have to create a safe environment for our children. We have to make sure if we see a young boy or a young girl that doesn't have a father figure, that we jump in and be mentors for them. It's all kind of work that we need to do too. But from this policy standpoint, from the policing standpoint, and from building an economy standpoint, that does involve in banks and politicians and things like that, that we would have to work with and be a part of the developing of it. So here's the key. When you own these three things so far, and then there's also media, there's education, and there's food, but I guess that falls under businesses, but I guess I just go media and then education in the coming weeks. When you have control of these, you have a city where it is much safer and much more friendly, livable conditions for people of color. And then we can knock a major dent in what we are doing wrong. The people who do sell drugs and get in gangs and commit crimes and violent acts, cut that down because there's business opportunity, and they're growing up in a different environment. But also, since we have control over the political and the judicial system, we also control and have a say-so in the rules of engagement that police have with people in that community. Because I would say that the police will have to live in that community. But these are the rules that you could implement if you control things. Black people really need to get about being in ownership, what we own and control. That's it. Whatever we own and control, then we can pretty much dictate what happens and how things happen, when things happen, and where things happen when you own and control. To have that type of power. Now, anytime you want to do something like this, it's funny that you're going to have black folks that are going to that just need white people's validation, that just, those black people who are paid for by white folks or whoever. Oh, you don't need to do that. You don't need to have that's segregation. You don't need to have that. You don't need to have. Okay. Well, you don't have to live there. You're either for it, you're either for us, or you're against us. That's it. Does this mean that we're totally segregated from any other race? No, but the other races have what I'm mentioning. They have towns that they live in that are safe, that are owned by white people, controlled by white people. Why can't black people do the same thing? We can, and we should. We're a $2 trillion people. So that's all I really have today. Own and control your court systems. You own and control your politicians. You own and have control over the economics and the money inflow and outflow in that city. Then we're starting to build a kingdom here. Then we're starting to, this is what it is. And you won't hear a lot of people talk about this. They'll talk about, we got the George Floyd Act that they won't pass. You see that? You see how you're depending on somebody else? Voting Rights Act. America is currently suing, the justice system is currently suing Georgia for targeting black folks. You see that? They don't care. They have to sue them. The justice is suing them. It's just terrible. It's just non-stop. They're going to do when they own and control the mayor, the governor of Florida, the governor of Georgia, the governor of Texas, the governor of Ohio, North Carolina, and all these other red states. They own and control, so they make the rules and they do what they want. We have to get to a point where we own and control and we can do what we want. There's no other way that I see. We've done everything else. King was headed this way. Marcus Garvey talked about this. Malcolm X talked about this. Hell, even James Brown talked about this. When do we learn? When do we get it? I mean, we're in a race-based society. There's no such thing as equality in a race-based society. Race is a contest between two races. That's what a race is. A race is a contest. It will never be equal because, as I said, when you go to the horse races, you do not want them to tie. There's money involved. You want somebody to win. I don't want to see a tie NBA championship. I don't want to see a tie in an NFL Super Bowl. I don't want to see a tie. I want somebody to win and somebody to lose. Well, that's the same thing in a race-based society. And as we've seen for the last 400 years, Black folks have always lost because you're competing in a society that has never, ever, 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 ever seen you as equal. If you're living in a society where you have the guardians of racism, which is the Supreme Court, who guard racism, so you got 8 white folks, you got 1 pretending to be Black. Okay, that is what it is. I mean, they're not gonna, anytime that Black people move forward, you had a white racist Supreme Court that shot everything down. Why do you think Georgia and Texas and Florida and North Carolina are able to pass these voter suppression laws that specifically target Black folks? It's because a white Supreme Court, Justice Roberts, in 2013 gutted the Civil Rights Act, gutted the Voting Rights Act. He ripped out Section 4, the plea clearance that made all the states get clearance from the government before they could change their voting rights laws. He ripped that out under the pretense that we don't need it anymore. We've come a long way, which is a bunch of foolishness. And then as soon as he did that, what did these southern states do? Bring in all these voter suppression laws. This is ownership. This is control. Okay. And what are we doing? Begging and crying and complaining about them not allowing you to vote on Sunday in Georgia. That they're cut out early voting, which they know that's what Black people do. That you can't give people water if they're waiting in a voting line. Everybody's mad and complaining, but you're going to the very person who's in control of the oppressive system, asking them to give you fair treatment. How's that going to work out for you? How's that going to work? How has it worked? If King recognized that it was a waste of time, well, he never said it was a waste of time, but what he did say, he said, I believe I led my people into a burning building. This is King. This is the most noticeable Civil Rights Act proponent that you can think of, who's the most notarized as far as getting civil rights passed. There's a lot of great people before King, but King is the most notarized among the world, whites, Blacks, Latinos, anybody, everybody knows who Martin Luther King is. And even he said, what did I integrate my people into? What am I integrating Black folks into white society for? To be treated worse to be treated like slaves, to be treated less than equal, to be not given jobs, to be tortured and why? We're still poor. I led my people to a burning building, King said. I fought all this time to get these civil rights when I should have been working on silver rights. I should have been focused on money. I led Black people into a burning building. This is what King said. Martin Luther King said this. If he got it, then when are we going to get it? And he started to change Operation Breadbasket. He said, I'm going to Washington to get our check. I'm going to get us some money. And then they killed him. Think about that. Biden just passed Juneteenth. Okay. All right, we got a day off. You're going to pass Juneteenth. And here's what they do. Republicans just don't do shit. But what the Democrats will do, in politics in general, I believe and you'll see, and this throughout the history, you know, with the 13th, 14th Amendment, they say we got to give black folks something just to keep them calm. We got to give black folks something. That's what Juneteenth is. Juneteenth is just, you know, and that being a federal holiday, that's just to give you something that you shut the hell up. That's just to give you a little something. That's to give you a little tease. Juneteenth to me is like you being hungry and me taking a piece of fried chicken and rubbing it on the outside of your stomach. Biden will pass Juneteenth, right? But he won't talk about reparations. Oh, no. When you talk about the government, and you talk about black people getting financial power, that's when you have your problem. When we talk about getting reparations, oh, Biden don't want to talk about reparations. We don't give you Juneteenth. I don't give a damn about Juneteenth. Give me reparations. So, you know, some black people don't want fine. And some white people say, how dare you ask for reparations? I always say that you need to keep your hypocritical trap shut, because white people are by far have gotten the most benefits from reparations. Jews got reparations. The Japanese got reparations in 1984 from Ronald Reagan. Everybody has gotten reparations. You know, they gave the Indians treaties, but they broke every one of them, you know. But every other race has gotten reparations except black people. We were promised 40 acres and a mule. You know, we worked 253 years in the cotton fields for free, and we were supposed to get reparation for that. Haven't gotten nothing. They give it to every other race between us because they don't want black people to be economically powerful. They keep us divided. We arguing over Democrat, Republican. You know, keep us arguing. They don't want us to come together and be financially powerful because it will totally take a big hit on their economy and their control over us. So they don't mind us, you know, asking them for civil rights and asking them for fair treatment and laws to be passed and all that stuff. They don't mind that. But when you go to them talking about reparations and giving black folks land or money or power, then that's when it's all no. And Barack Obama, a black man, said no. So you know they just won't do it. But you know, Barack Obama was who he was. Biden's not going to give reparations either. They don't want us to have that financial power. They don't want us to own and control NFL teams, own and control major media outlets, own and control cities. You know, they don't want us to, you know, own and control, you know, major corporations in general. They don't want us to own and control major plots of lands and cities that will impact other races. Though they don't want that. I mean, they don't mind you making money. I mean, you could be black man, you become a millionaire. As a black man, you become a billionaire. Yes, it's done. Or as a black woman, you could become that. But as long as you make your money and don't try to buy up anything of significance, and you don't try to bring other black people together, that's why you won't see a Oprah or a Bob Johnson or a Magic Johnson or any of those black billionaires all come together as a group and say, hey, look, let's start something that's going to strictly support black people. Imagine that. All the black billionaires come together and say, you know what? We're gonna invest in building a city that has black banks, black businesses, black politicians, black own and control justice systems, education systems that are common, that are for black, that are raised and build self-esteem for black young black girls and young black boys. We're going to teach them entrepreneurship. We're going to teach them how to plant and grow their own food. We're going to teach them how to invest. We're going to teach them how to do a business plan. You know, all these type of things. We're going to teach them black history from cradle to grave. We're going to teach them black history and why black people have the most prominent history in all the world. Building their self-esteem. Why not? Oprah built a school over in Africa. Here's what I heard that when she tried to build one here, she got all kind of pushback and it became a big hassle. If that's the case, that's because white people didn't want her to build a school for black folks here. They don't want that. Look, down in Texas, in the South, they're trying to say they don't even want to teach history, black history. They don't want to even teach them about slavery in school because it will lower the self-esteem of white folks. If you really taught history in its fullness to white kids, it will lower their self-esteem because they found out how dirty their history is, how stolen everything that America has is. And they're not going to do that because they're going to protect white folks. But in a black school that was only controlled by black folks, we can teach the young black kids what they want. Could white kids come there? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Black kids will bust out the white schools all day long. Yeah, white kids can come. But when that black kid was busted at white school, they didn't teach him black history. They taught him white history. They taught him the white education structure. That's what they taught him. So if a white kid comes to a black neighborhood, a Kingdomhood, a Wakanda, whatever name you want to call it, they're going to learn black history. Mixed, and they'll learn full American history too. But that's what they'll learn. And that's okay. If they want to come to our neighborhood, that's what they can learn. We go to their neighborhood, it's the same thing. Same thing. And we don't ask no questions. We don't, my son's going to a white school. I'm just so happy. Don't ask no questions. Don't ask none. And so the same can happen here. So anyway, that's part 3. Now we own and control our court systems, and we own and control the police, and we have true community policing. So let me, it's been 46 minutes. So let me talk real briefly about what the policing looks like as far as in a kingdomhood. This is the policing part. We got the justice system that owned and controlled by black folks. So there's not going to be any targeting. There's not going to be giving a white man 6 years for selling cocaine, or 6 months, but giving a black man 6 years for selling crack. There won't be any of that. There won't be any planted evidence, the courts losing false DNA evidence and all that type of stuff. The police, the court won't just take the police's word. They got to have evidence. If they're bringing evidence, against, a black suspect or something like that. And those courts are just as aggressive as prosecuting and hearing the cases of black police officers committing crimes as they are as citizens. Okay, and we are a justice system of second chances for those who deserve it. Those who don't do it, they got to go to jail. I'm not saying don't prosecute anybody, but you're gonna have people that look like us that are running this courtroom, that understand what these kids go through, and have somewhat of an empathetic when it comes to sentencing or creating a second chance program for that kid to change his life. All right. So in regards to the police, here's how the police will be ran. Well, first of all, I believe that it should be an all-black police force. I don't think you should have white people policing black folks. That has not worked out well for us. But in the case that happens, because I don't think you really can discriminate. You can't stop white people from working in black neighborhoods, and nor should we. Give me 1 second. I gotta plug my finger. Give me 1 second. I got to plug it in. There you go. I'm all plugged in. Sorry about that. Straighten out my camera here. All plugged in. Let's go. Okay, so look. So here's how policing looks. Okay. Any police officer who's policing in a kingdomhood must live in that particular neighborhood. You cannot live well, I already said that, it's not gonna, I don't think white people should police black people. I think that black people should police themselves. And I say that because when you have a black police officer in a white neighborhood, that black police officer that's a police officer in suburbia is not going to be pulling on white kids over and harassing them. I bet you that. I bet you that. How many cases do you have where a black police officer saw a white boy selling cigarettes and pulled him over, pulled the chokehold on him and killed him? How many cases out there? Yeah, no, there's none. None I know of. Or there was let's do Orlando Castile, where I believe that's his name, where he was I think it was Minnesota, where he was in his car with his daughter and his girlfriend, and let's say Orlando Castile was white, and there's a black officer, and the white man says, "I have a gun. I have the right to carry a gun. I have one," and the black officer starts shooting him in front of his baby girl and his wife or girlfriend. That doesn't happen. That's not going to happen in a white neighborhood. It will. That officer will not have. It will not happen. His officer knows he got a major problem coming. He better have a damn good reason to arrest a white boy if he's a police officer in suburbia. Then he better have a very good reason, because he's gonna have a whole lot of backlash. He's gonna have the mayor, the police chief, the city councilman, that white kid's father, who's probably friends with the mayor and friends with the police chief, friends with the city councilman. They're all golfing buddies. His lieutenant and sergeant will probably know the white dude. It just doesn't happen. So if that's the case, if a white person policing a black neighborhood, then they need to be on that same fire. And but anyway, I say that black folks need to police themselves. But if for some reason a white man is a police officer, he needs to live in that community. Live in that community, understand the culture, the people, get to know people, be a person of the community. You can't be community policing if you don't know anything about the community. How can you be community policing and you don't even know the people there? You don't know the culture. You don't understand how the people live, how they think, their ideas about policing and how they look at police. How do you police something that you know nothing about? You can't. You just look at them as animals, and if they look suspicious, you pull them over and start harassing them. That's what's happening. That will not happen in the Kingdomhood. That will not happen, because they will live in that neighborhood. They will get to know everybody, get to know the parents, getting to know the parents, getting to know the kids, getting to know the business owners, and all that. They really understand the city from what they are policing. And when it's necessary, there's some violence going on, so God forbid there's gangs in this particular city, that they are acting within their policing powers and doing the right things. Because if they don't, they're going before citizens review boards of people that are the black folks, and they're going to review the case. Okay, and if it's caused an unjustifiable homicide, that officer is not only fired, but he is brought up on charge and prosecuted with the full extent of law. They know this going in. Okay, they know that their pension, and I always say this, their pension is snatched and goes to the victim. Not only that, they have to carry insurance. That if and the reason why I say they need to carry insurance is because I don't like the fact that the victim's family sues the city and it takes money from the city. Okay, how many times has New York been sued? Oh my God, New York's been sued tons of times. You're taking the money away from the city, then apologize and say, oh, we don't have money to build parks, we don't have money to fix the roads, we don't have money to take care of the utility system, we don't have money to deal with homelessness, or whatever it may be. Hopefully there won't be any homeless in the city. But I'm just saying is, that's what the politicians are saying. So if that cop carries insurance, then when he or she kills somebody's unarmed and is fired, and then that family sues the city, they sue the insurance company and the police officer personally, getting their pension, suing the insurance company, getting the rest of the money, and they don't touch this. They don't touch the public bank. They don't touch that money. Okay, and so that's my idea about policing, because when you have these rules and these guidelines about policing, they'll be less apt to kill somebody. Look, if they do it because they know they can get away with it, it doesn't cost them. You got a few of them, Amber Geiger and Chauvin. You got the guy in Florida who got 25 years. Those are the most noticeable ones. I'm sure there's other ones out there, but for the most part, they get away with it, because I think it's, according to policeviolence.org, I think it's like 95% of them don't even get prosecuted or not even brought to trial. So for the most 95% of the time, they're getting away with this. When they start understanding that they can't get away with this stuff, then they're gonna stop doing it. Then they're gonna stop doing it when they know that I can't get away with this stuff. I'm losing my pension. Even if I don't get criminally convicted, I may avoid jail, but I'm gonna lose my pension, and and then my insurance is gonna get sued. Even if they don't lose their job, Even if they don't lose, even if they don't go to jail, they got to pay. They'll stop doing it. When they know their personal livelihood is on the line, they'll be less likely to shoot and kill black folks. We gotta get strategic about this. And now, before I go, I was reading an article, and they were talking about 20 police resignations are up now that people are getting. There's going to be more laws to come, and that people are really complaining about the way policing. Well, those 20% resign. Good. If your ass resigns because the George Floyd Act may get passed, or your ass resigns because we are making you want to wear a body cam or hold your feet to the fire, then good. Leave. Get your ass out, because we don't want you. All the ones who are resigning, they need to go. And the ones that are staying, those are the good police officers who do the job right. And what people, and they complain about people, we're not talking to them. I support good policing. Let me be clear. I support good policing. I got police in my family, and I support good policing. It's the bad policing that we're talking about. All right, guys, that's Kingdomhood. I'm done now. And then next week, we're going to talk about media. And I'll probably lump media in with education. Just keep it short. But yeah, so thanks for tuning in, and thanks for sharing my vision with me about how to build a kingdomhood. God bless you guys. See you next week.